These cheerful people of Sarnamati spent every monsoon under constant threat of floods in the past. Confined between two big rivers, locals of Sarnamati suffered every monsoon as floods inundated their settlements. After the implementation of community-based disaster risk management program, these people do not need to spend sleepless nights during the rainy season.
एकैचोटी बाढी आउँथ्यो र घरभित्र पानी पसेपछि मात्रै हामीलाई थाहा हुन्थ्यो र बाढी आएछ भनेर। अब अहिले चाहिँ यो पूर्व सूचना प्रणाली लागू भएता चाहिँ हामीलाई 2-3 घण्टा अगाडि नै थाहा हुन्छ, जानकारी हुन्छ।
Members of the community are the first people to suffer disaster risk, and also they are the one as first responder in case of disaster. The Ministry of Federal Affairs and Local Development is leading the Nepal Risk Reduction Consortium flagship for community-based disaster risk reduction and risk management. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, is the co-lead of the flagship 4 mechanism in Nepal. The government of Nepal is following Sendai Framework for Disaster Reduction 2015 to 2030 and has been concentrating all its actions based on the framework. Nepal Risk Reduction Consortium Flagship 4 is a coordination and advocacy mechanism for community-based disaster risk reduction management (CBDRM) in Nepal. It aims to build a common understanding and approach among the many organizations contributing to CBDRM activities to track progress against national targets and encourage greater investment for scaling up CBDRM across the country. Nepal is one of the most vulnerable countries in terms of disaster risk. The country is ranked 11th in terms of vulnerability related with earthquake and 30th in terms of flood risk. As per country's data of the last 23 years, around 938 people die every year in various natural disasters. Not to forget the loss of properties worth over 1.2 billion rupees every year due to disasters like floods and landslides. Many agencies, including Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, UN agencies, INGOs, NGOs are involved in Flagship 4. These partner agencies have been implementing CBDRR program designed under its framework with 9 minimum characteristics of a disaster-resilient community. Heading through different most vulnerable village development committees and municipalities, it has contributed to mitigate local disaster risk in the communities. The major aim is raising awareness on disasters and making communities more resilient by imparting necessary skills. These communities, expecting relief in the past, have now rolled up their sleeves to face disasters. They have prepared community-based approach for the same. Disaster management committees and subcommittees have been formed at the community, ward and village development committee levels. These communities have owned the programs with widening representation of women and persons with disabilities, even in the decision-making process for making safer communities. Raising awareness is an important aspect of disaster risk reduction. Community members are raising awareness through the means of posters, pamphlets, songs, and street drama, among others. Since the community-based disaster risk management program initiated in the village, people became aware and are learning about multiple hazards. As a result, the innocent people deserved the capacity of drafting their own disaster management plan.
विपदको बेला हामीलाई त्यस्तै सुविधाको लागि विपदकै सुविधाको लागि हामीहरु त्यो नक्सा बनाएर एउटा 3 नम्बर वार्डको नक्सा बनाएर देखाइराखेको छौं र यहाँ आउनुभएका 3-4 वार्डका सदस्यहरूलाई पनि देखाउनलाई त्यो हामीहरू बनाएको.
Loss of lives and properties in flood-related incidents in Nepal was lesser this year, despite receiving more rainfall rather than last year. It was possible due to the enhancement of preparedness practices of the communities and active involvement of disaster response task forces.
यो कचुदामा बाढी आयो त्यहाँ पनि उद्धार गर्न हाम्रो टोली पुगेपछि अनि जस्तो कि त्यो घर पुरै डुबानमा पर्दाखेरि मकै थियो गहुँ थियो सबै बाख्रा थियो त्यो उद्धार गरियो र बाबा आमै पनि रहेछ तिनीहरुलाई पनि लगेर वहाँ सुरक्षित स्थानमा लग्यो.
Contribution of these task forces in search and rescue operations and first aid after the massive earthquake of April 2015 was precious.
हामीलाई त्यति बेला चाहिँ डर भन्दा पनि हामीलाई चाहिँ यो हामीले सिकेको सिपलाई कसरी चाहिँ नि यसलाई चाहिँ व्यवहारमा उतार्ने भन्नेपट्टि लागेको भएर हामीहरु चाहिँ 12 जना मेम्बरहरु चाहिँ 4 वटा ठाउँमा चाहिँ हामी डिभाइड भएर चाहिँ 4 ठाउँमा काम गर्यौं.
Various types of plans have been made at the VDC and municipal levels for disaster risk reduction. Such plans basically incorporate for preparedness, response and recovery cycle of the disaster. Emergency funds have been set up at the community level to involve the community people themselves in search, rescue and immediate support. These emergency funds are created with the aim of mobilization of local resources, that is, regular collection of food grains voluntarily from the community members. It has been managed as 20% of the collected food grains has been allocated for distribution in case of emergency. The remaining food grain are to be deposited with making cash.
विपद पर्दाखेरि धेरै धाएपछि मात्रै रात पाउँथ्यौं. अहिले हामीले मुठी संकलन गरेको हुँदा हामी सँगै छ. हामीलाई केही विपत्ति आउने बित्तिकै हामीहरूले भण्डारण गरेको लगेर रात दिन सक्छौं.
Access of the community over resources helps to reduce disaster risk. Availability of necessary resource helps to be involved in preparedness, response and mitigate risks. People living along the banks of Kankai River fear to spend their days and nights gauging the water level. But since an early warning system has been installed at the Mainachuli Water Measurement Center, their lives and lifestyle has drastically changed. Contribution of organizations with their meaningful participation together with beneficiaries in the field of disaster risk reduction, their responding capacity enhancement programs for community members, realizing that the involvement is crucial for sustainability of any project. As a result, the people who used to see natural disaster as a curse of God have now been working to mitigate the risks of disasters.
When it comes to the review of the flagship so far, I think we have to mention 2 success stories. One is that on community level, but also on the level of ministries, there is a higher awareness about disaster risk reduction. And we have to be aware of it. This doesn't happen from one day to the other. This doesn't happen from 1 week to the other. It takes years. So this, I think, is a success story. A second issue I would like to mention is the formation of local teams working together, doing exercises together. And I think this is a second success story we should mention here.
Visible changes can be seen in the lives of these communities. Community members who used to run to safer places with the onset of monsoon are now involved in disaster risk reduction measures. It's encouraging to see the community members, rather than leaving the place, now are working to mitigate the risk and make their communities safer. The major achievement of these initiatives is that community members have learned the skill which will save their lives and properties in case of emergencies. Poor people are most vulnerable to disaster risks. So, CBDRM program has also been focusing on livelihood improvement of vulnerable communities. This initiative has been encouraging people to involve in the program as they are learning skills to face disaster and at the same time enhancing their means of livelihoods.
लगभग मैले 15,000 रुपैयाँ ल्याएको थिएँ सर, 25,000 रुपैयाँ कमाइसकेँ। 25,000 रुपैयाँ कमाइकन पनि अहिले यति सामान छ मसँग।
Communities have changed the course of river through bioengineering. They have started making money by using the field which was washed away by the river earlier. Riverbed farming has been a boon in such communities. The community-based disaster risk management program has been very effective. The integrated response during last year's earthquake can be taken as an example. No one can deny the effectiveness of the programs that have made Nepal's vulnerable communities much safer and resilient to disasters. The need of the hour is to extend the programs in other areas that have been identified as vulnerable to disaster. This will not only be instrumental in saving lives from disaster, but also in preventing the loss of properties. Moreover, participating donor agencies contribute to this program, which is directly working with beneficiaries, and change their perception meaningfully. At the same time, government agencies working at the grassroots level should own the program and make some built-in mechanism of allocating budget regularly for disaster risk reduction.
There are two important elements in resource management. The one important element that how we can efficiently and effectively utilize the existing stock of the resources. That's one thing. How we can prioritize. That's why we have been preparing this local disaster management plan, district disaster management plan. So we have to, that's important thing. Second is that the government has set priority for the disaster management. We have the disaster management framework and everything. And how we can bring other partners into the priority of the government. Flagship 4 is the mechanism for coordinating the different partners. It is a forum for the dialogue between government and the other partners. And this flagship 4 work. And now this ministry is working with different partners. We have been coordinating different NGOs, INGOs, other stakeholders. There are different agencies are working in this country. I have to say that the major challenge in disaster is how we can increase the investment at the local level.
Community-based disaster risk management program has been instrumental in enhancing the resilience of the communities and enhance sustainable means of livelihood of the vulnerable communities. However, there is a need of scaling up the program to convert all the vulnerable communities into safer communities.